how many of you find that the springtime is a challenging time for your health? Maybe you get bronchitis, allergies, different things happen. Yeah, so very interesting. You probably saw the little blurb in the paper or on the posters that actually our genes are going through a massive transition at this time of year. And I found this knowledge extremely interesting because I had learned an ancient system of healthcare called Ayurveda from India 30 years ago and have been integrating it into my practice alongside Western medicine and standard diagnosis and treatment. I favor the natural approach, and I use this Ayurveda. And Ayurveda has some very, what seemed to me at the time, actually kind of unusual and strange ideas. Coming from Western medical training and Johns Hopkins, I found it kind of strange, the idea that, well, at different times of the year, you should eat different foods. But what happened a few years ago, maybe 2 or 3, I gave a talk at the International Ayurveda Congress in Roermond, Holland, and I gave a talk on chronobiology and about how our genes and our whole body is changing through the 24-hour cycle. And in fact, they discovered recently that every cell in our body has a clock. It's keeping time. It's keeping track of where we are in the 24-hour cycle. And I thought that was fascinating and very validating because Ayurveda has given us 5,000 years ago a routine to follow, when we should get up for optimal health, when we should go to bed, when we should eat our biggest meal, which I found actually in applying it that it made a lot of difference in people's health, just very simple adjustments like that. But the seasonal thing, I thought, oh, it's going to take them another 10 years, 20 years to research the season. That is just too weird of an idea, right? Well, one of my colleagues from the conference sent me an email a few days after, and lo and behold, there was the first article I'd ever seen about scientific research on the seasonality of gene expression. Meaning, yeah, our genes change. And when I looked more deeply into it, I saw, wow, in spring and fall, when Ayurveda tells us we have a big change of season, that the body has to kind of let go of everything that built up in the last season and that whole style of functioning, like the winter now, the cold and the dry. And now we're getting into the wet, the rainy, the moist, and we're heading towards the hot. And at this time of year, thousands, it turns out, thousands of our genes are ramping down. They're active in the winter and they're becoming more quiescent for the summer. And at the same time, other genes that were quiet in the winter, they're becoming active. So right at this crossroads, thousands are ramping down, thousands are ramping up. This is our change of season. What Ayurveda told us is that at these season changes, our body is especially vulnerable to having a cold or getting some condition. And what it does is give us actually very practical recommendations of what we should do this time of year to stay healthy. And I'm going to go into those with you tonight. And those recommendations, those adjustments in our diet and in our lifestyle at this time of the year help to ease allergies and respiratory problems and other conditions in most people. And I'm going to share with you some wisdom from Ayurveda as well as some supplements from Western herbology, as well as some things I've learned in my practice that seem to work for people. So I'll share those with you. So that's where we're going to start with this change of season. And then we're going to look a little more deeply into the whole detox concept. Because Ayurveda says not only are we vulnerable at the season changes, but there's something very special about spring. What is it? We women, right? We go around and we clean the house and we get all the dust out from the winter and we open the windows and open the doors and we hang clothes on rugs outside to get that fresh air. So we're kind of have that in our genes, maybe, you know, that tendency to go clean. Well, it turns out that our genes have it in their genes to go clean. And there's an enhancement of detoxification, especially in the spring. Now, I have to tell you that when I went and looked in the very limited literature so far on seasonality of gene expression, I was unable to find anything that said in the spring the detox genes ramp up per se. In fact, the detox genes in one article were used as a control because they stayed basically the same throughout the year. But we know from Ayurveda that the body is starting to release deeply seated impurities and waste that built up in the winter. And so this is a time we want to support our detox system and help it to do its job. And we're gonna dive really deeply into a very, very interesting topic tonight, which is what, how, and what are the processes by which our liver detoxifies our body. Put your right hand right below right on the bottom of your ribs here on the right, and just thank your liver. We take this organ for granted, and it is doing so much work for us every moment, helping us keep our blood sugar steady, helping us make red blood cells, helping clear bacteria and toxins from our blood and from everything that we're ingesting and even from what we're breathing. It's an amazing organ. And, you know, we can pretty much ignore it in most of our life. Things go fairly well. But, you know, there's something we're not really getting in traditional Western medicine. And why do I say that? Well, if you look at the statistics, 2/3 of Americans have at least one chronic condition. And chronic, what does chronic mean? It means Western medicine hasn't been able to, one, prevent it in the first place, and two, get rid of it once it came up. And unfortunately, most of us go through life kind of accumulating chronic conditions, one after the other, and with them, medications, chronic medications, ones that we have to keep taking because the doctors say, well, now you take this for the rest of your life. Well, why is that? You know, as a healer, healing-oriented physician and healer, I take that as something that's not acceptable to me. You know, while I accept some people may need a medicine, okay? Maybe they do, and I'm not against medicines that we need, you know? In fact, I encourage people many times that they do need to take a particular medicine. But I think the general trend of going to the doctor for a pill and leaving with a prescription, and that's pretty much 90% of the whole interaction, and accumulating drugs and accumulating chronic diseases as we get older is not healing. It's not medicine. It's not what we want, right? We want to be restored to health. And we want to learn how we can help keep our body healthy and not get sick. So let's focus on that tonight. That's the orientation I have. And let's use spring as a springboard for healing. It's a really powerful and very valuable time of the year where our bodies are trying to help us. They're trying to cleanse, they're trying to purify and make themselves healthy. And if we just give them a little help, they're going to do that job better. So I'd like to share some slides with you just to illustrate some of the points. And what we're going to do is first we're going to look a little more at the research on the seasonal change. And then we're going to look at this concept of Ayurveda, this natural system of medicine and health, and what it says about how we accumulate toxins and how we get rid of toxins or waste. And what is it that we need to do now in springtime to facilitate our bodies getting healthier? And Ayurveda is the only system that I know of that has such a deep and complete, comprehensive approach to it, which I'm just going to touch on the most important points tonight, that you can take something home that you can apply. And then we're going to ask the question, what kind or category of toxins do you have? And that's based on the idea that Ayurveda tells us there are basically three categories we're going to talk about. And one is basically lack of much in the way of toxins. And then there are two other kinds. And there's plain old gummy, cloggy ones. And then there are kind of activated, energetic, and free radicalized toxins that are really dangerous, right? So we want to take a quiz. We're going to all take a quiz and figure out which one that you have. Did we give a quiz? You don't have a quiz in your handout, do you? Okay. So maybe I can ask my assistant here to get my backpack, because I'm going to give you the quiz by just by verbal, okay? So we're going to take a quiz, and then I'm going to give you a few recommendations based on that. In fact, you're going to type yourself. You actually have the recommendations in your handouts. And you'll see that there's a particular tea you can drink this spring and some spices that you can use. This is a slide which shows the sun and the rays of the sun going through the eyes back to a part of the brain, the hypothalamus, which has a suprachiasmatic nucleus, which actually is the master clock. It's like every cell in our body, or just about every cell, has been discovered to have a clock. But these clocks, like the old-fashioned kind that aren't all like automatically, global satellite tuned, they can maybe vary a little bit. So what happens is every day as we get up in the morning and we get exposed to light, that master clock in the brain, which is getting the light through the eyes, it serves to reset all the clocks in our body. So cellular clock genes, these genes actually govern the expression of our DNA at different times of the day to suit the activities that it wants us to do at those times of day. And it resynchronizes them, as I mentioned. And these clock genes are actually genes that are registering how long is that light in the day, right? Is it short? Oh, it's short. It's getting longer, like right now. So it knows, okay, we're in spring. Light is getting longer. So it actually also governs our seasons, our seasonality of the genes. So here is an expression of seasonality of some of the clock genes and how they change their expression or adjust with the seasons. So they're adjusting our circadian rhythm along with the length of the day. This is a fabulous article. I'd highly recommend it to anyone who wants to fall asleep early tonight. No, actually, it's really a wonderful, very rich in understanding and research on seasonality of our genes. And that was the main source for my talk tonight on these topics. Isn't that interesting? It looks sort of like a bandit, right? Kind of the black. Well, this bandit actually is a tracing or a graph, which is each one of those lines is the activity of one gene. And so if you start in the upper left, at the very top you'll see, pick out a little line. You see, okay, you're at the peak of a mountain, you're going to go down the slope and you're going to go actually through that node and all the way down to the bottom of the ocean. And you see along the bottom it says January through December, left to right. So that means that that gene in January is very active. It's a winter gene. It's a winter gene. And then, if you'll notice, where is this node? This node, meaning where all these are crossing, the ones that were low are crossing high, and the ones high are crossing low. It's right around April. So here we are. It's right around April. And then it's going to shift again right around October. The change of season. Here we have another more beautiful depiction of this. And this is seasonal variation in hormone receptor genes. Anyone notice the bunnies running around the yard these days chasing each other? Well, they're making babies, baby bunnies, and this is the time of year. Well, actually, for rabbits, I understand that it doesn't really matter what time of year, but they have a lot of litters this time of year. So we have April again, a time that some are turning off and some are turning on. And then, maybe if you're a deer, if you're a deer, you're more interested in the node and the turning on in the autumn, right? Because that's when deer go into rut. Gene activity, summer and winter in asthma patients. So here we have, it looks just like some pretty colors, but what it is the green are those upper activity of the genes. And summer, no, the green is in winter. So here again, January, the green's on top. And that's in the northern hemisphere. See UK and Ireland? So the green is on top, then it goes down in July, and then it goes up again in the winter. Well, what happens in Australia, our southern hemisphere cousins? It's the opposite, right? So their winter genes are turned off in January. Why? Yeah, it's summer there. We're just the ones who call January winter. So it's exactly opposite. And then back up in the United States, the northern hemisphere, it looks like UK and Ireland. So very, very interesting. So Ayurveda. How many are just hearing about Ayurveda really in depth tonight? Anybody? No, pretty much know about it. Okay, I won't waste much time then to explain, but it is the longest continuously practiced medical system. It's a sister science of yoga. Everybody is doing yoga or knows yoga, and yoga is from the same tradition from India, the Vedic tradition, and it is aiming through its physical various therapies and practices for good health, and it's perfectly complemented by the approaches of Ayurveda for both prevention and treatment. Here's a little vignette about yeah, this was a revelation to me when I first went to residency. Oh, hospital food is unhealthy. We feed our doctors and we feed our patients bad food. I think it was, I won't say the brand, but it was some kind of like, the only vegetarian they had in the cafeteria was this kind of cheesy noodly thing that was popped in a microwave and came out of a frozen thing. It was, once is okay, but you eat it every day for 3 months. And I had a stomach ache all the time. So this was me, gassy, bloaty, indigestion, moody. So I had some friends and colleagues at the time who were into meditation. And they had come to a clinic in, of all places, Fairfield, Iowa in 1984 for some kind of cleanse. Now, I'm from Green Bay, Wisconsin. We don't cleanse there, except for our cars. We do wash our cars. And we wash down a few beers with a few broths, but no, seriously, I'd never heard of cleanse, never. Got through medical school. They certainly don't teach it there. But my friends were raving about how great they felt and how this was so wonderful. And I have to admit, I was so miserable that I felt I had to do something, and that was the only thing I'd heard of. So I scheduled 3 days at a clinic here in Fairfield back in '85. And believe me, when they gave me the instructions of what I had to do before I came, I almost canceled. Thank goodness for change fees with airlines. It just was going to cost me too much. So I came. And that was actually kind of the epiphany for me, was to have this personal experience. You know, after 6 years of medical training, 4 at Johns Hopkins and now 2 at Stanford, I really hadn't learned anything that helps you become healthy. You know, I'd learned a lot of how to treat diseases and match pills to diagnosis or surgery to diagnosis. And look, that's all important. It's important for acute care. It's important to save lives. But for chronic health problems like, oh, my stomach doesn't feel good anymore and I don't sleep well, more drugs? I was 25 years old. I wasn't going to get into a cycle of drugs. I wanted to feel good again. So I went to the clinic, and actually, from those 3 days, had such an amazing turnaround. And I came back from there, I felt great, and unlike getting a few massages at a spa for 3 days, and then, you know, you get back to work and you feel good the first morning, and then by like Wednesday, you're like the same as before you went. You're tired again. You know, I felt good for months. I really felt good for months. And I said to myself, you know what, this is an approach that really makes you healthier. So that's how I got into this. So let's take a look at a few different concepts in Ayurveda that are going to help us understand how to cleanse and how to get through spring and why we should do these few things I'm going to mention. So Hippocrates was a post-Ayurvedic scholar by maybe 4,000 years, but nonetheless smart, and he said all disease begins in the gut. And interestingly, Ayurveda says the key to health and longevity is good digestion. Now, I don't really want you to feel sorry for me, but you know what? For like 26 years, I practiced Ayurveda, and I had to rely on common sense and my patient's experience, because digestion was something Western medicine didn't think about unless it had to do with an ulcer or Crohn's disease or an autoimmune or irritable bowel, something that they put a diagnosis on. And finally, thank goodness, the gut, the word the gut came along. Gut health. Digestion still is a very boring word. People glaze over when they hear digestion. But gut health, somehow it gets you right here. And gut is become like the new poster child for Western medicine and personalized medicine, and it's a new frontier. And I have a gastroenterologist friend in California who told me that the last 3 conferences she's gone to in GI have all been about gut health and the microbiome, these trillions of bacteria that live in our gut and have so much to do with our immune system. So 70% of our immune system is in the gut. 80% of our serotonin, which is what all these antidepressants like Prozac and Effexor, they all increase serotonin. Well, maybe just keep your gut bacteria happy and they will produce serotonin for you. There are 500 million nerves in our gut, so when we do have a gut feeling, we probably should at least listen to it, not necessarily do what it says, but take it into account. It knows some things maybe we don't. We are 90% bacteria. So if somebody calls you, well, what kind of germ are you? Well, I say, well, 90%. Chronobiology, there's a chronobiology of our digestion and also of our gut bacteria and their action. We're also learning that food allergies and intolerances are becoming more prevalent in our society. We're not totally sure why, but maybe some of the many changes in the protein structure of our food. And new conditions have come up, or they've been identified, such as small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, which can cause a lot of gas and bloating in people, where too much bacteria gets in our small intestine, not just in our large intestine where it belongs. And also a condition called increased intestinal permeability, which means, well, that's the fancy word for leaky gut, which I won't say because I'm a Western trained doctor and that's sort of like not an official term. We have, though, increased intestinal permeability. But seriously, they're the same things, and it's very interesting because Ayurveda told us all these thousands of years ago that one of the major causes of chronic conditions is poor digestion, which leads to inflammation or irritation in the gut, and an absorption of molecules that are not fully broken down. So what is our gut's job? Our gut has a job. Whoops. Whoops. Huh. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, our job of our gut is to break down food with acids and enzymes. It's supposed to break down those big molecules of food into the simplest molecules. Fatty acids, simple sugars, and amino acids, right? So protein to amino acids, fat to fatty acids, carbohydrates to simple sugars. If they're all broken down properly, then the body can absorb those through a very intact gut lining with just tiny little holes through which those things are supposed to come, filtering out all the other things. And then when they get into the bloodstream and get delivered to the tissues say, yes, you're giving me bricks. I can build the house the way I want. You're giving me building blocks to run the metabolism and keep my structure healthy. But what happens if you give it like half a hamburger in the bloodstream, you know? I mean, jokingly, but you know, you give it a protein molecule that isn't broken down. It's not just amino acids. So what can it do with that? It can't do anything except try to deal with it coming in and clogging up the works, getting stuck in the cell membranes or clogging some subtle lymphatic channels. This clogginess, Ayurveda tells us, is a very major cause of the buildup of toxins in our body. Even if our body, which it is programmed to try to clear it out through the lymphatics, you know, we have this return. Nutrients go in, waste come out of the cells, right? Do you think your cells excrete? Yes, they don't just absorb, they also get rid of. Just like our gross body excretes, it gets rid of waste and it expels carbon dioxide and all this stuff. Every cell has to squeeze out the bad stuff, which goes into the lymphatics and back into the bloodstream, and then the liver and our kidneys especially, those two organs especially, will clear them, have to eliminate them. But what happens if the lymphatic channels and maybe other channels of the body look like LA during rush hour? Not much is going anywhere, right? Even if you're an ambulance, you're a really highly toxic molecule that has to get out of there. You know, you're not going to go anywhere fast. So what we have to do is we have to unclog our system. And I'd like to go back just a few slides here and talk about what signs and symptoms come when we're clogged up. And maybe you could make a note. If you have any of these, maybe you could make a little check mark for each one of these. I'll read them off. If you think it applies to you 50% or more, then make a check mark. Less strength or stamina, fatigue, mental or physical, heavy feeling in your body, lack of mental clarity, chronic congestion, reduced immunity, frequent colds, or we could say allergies there, frequent indigestion, constipation, spitting or too much saliva, lack of appetite, and coating of the tongue. If you look at your tongue in the morning, that it's got a whitish or thick coating on it, that would be a sign of some of this clogginess in the system. Now, some people think that dairy causes clogginess. How many have that experience that if they eat, maybe they eat a pizza at night, they wake up the next morning and their neck is stiff or they're congested or their joints are sore? or they eat too much dairy. Anybody feel that dairy doesn't agree with them? Maybe a few people. Few people, quite a few. So, it can vary depending on your body and your digestive capability. Throw a green log on a very, very strong fire, and it might burn most of the log, right? But you put even a few green twigs on a little tiny flame, and it won't touch it. They barely even burn. So it's that relative strength of our acids and enzymes, ability to break those down. Well, I was interested in this because when I first was getting to know Ayurveda, actually just even before, I had a friend at medical school, and they told me, they were kind of naturopathically oriented. I don't know what they were doing at Hopkins, but they said, yeah, here, I just eat ice cream, and here that comes right out my nose, and blows his nose. I go, what? That's crazy. But he actually did get congested every time he ate ice cream. Well, here's what Mayo Clinic says about it. Good news and bad news. One is that it does make phlegm thicker and possibly then more irritating in the throat, or maybe harder to clear from the chest or from the sinuses. But they didn't actually find that it creates more mucus. But as I always say to all my patients is, your body doesn't lie. Listen to it, and if it tells you it doesn't like something, then adjust. So we know digestion allows us to have good metabolism, and it builds up our body tissues. And imbalanced digestion, as we talked about, creates undigested molecules that irritate the gut and cause absorption of things that shouldn't be absorbed. And these are all the things that can help break down our digestion, bad diet, eating too late at night or the wrong times, exposure to light. Well, that can affect our metabolism, actually. Recent research shows that, by the way, walking for 20 minutes or even being outside for 20 minutes in the morning before noon, people who do that are on average 20% lighter in their body weight. And it turns out that it seems to affect metabolism, that there's a certain portion of our genes of metabolism that are ramped up by being exposed to morning light. And Ayurveda has always said, take a morning walk outside. So there's a motivation there. Antibiotics that destroy some of our good bacteria, stress, bad eating habits, eating when you're not hungry, delaying meals when you are hungry, various infections, parasites, bad bacteria, toxins, possibly genetically modified organisms, autoimmune functions, food allergies, and our genetics. These are all things that can influence our digestion. And what do both Ayurveda and Western medicine agree? Well, we should eat mainly whole foods, fresh fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, Mediterranean-style diet. Avoid junk foods, processed stuff, and consume high-quality plant-based oils and fats. And the added Ayurvedic dimension is it says favor easy-to-digest foods. And it doesn't necessarily mean big salads. We might think big salads are light. But for some people, depends on your type or your body type, digestive type, all of that raw vegetable can cause a lot of gas. And even in women, too much fiber, young women, will cause irregular periods. Because very thin women, we say they're Vata type, they need actually oils, lots of oils to make their hormones. And if they have too much fiber, they don't have enough fat in their body, and they will lose that regularity. Eat appropriate food for the time of day and consume diet according to your unique constitution, digestive ability, and digestive type, as I just alluded to. So basically, Ayurveda says either we break food down well and we have good health, or we break it down poorly and we will get poor health. Here's a little schematic of food molecules that normally, if they're properly digested, those little tiny molecules will seep through a nice tight lining of the intestine. Only the good little simple molecules will get through. And here, we've got increased intestinal permeability. The gut lining is irritated, and when things get irritated, they swell and they leak. and they ooze. And so here we've got things not properly broken down, and they're slipping through extra wide junction points. And here we get the leaky gut with symptoms that can happen all over the body, from the thyroid, our mood, our brain function, our colon, elimination, adrenal system, autoimmune conditions, sinus problems, joint problems. Many different things have their source in now the Western concept of leaky gut or increased intestinal permeability, and the Ayurvedic concept of ama. It's called, those are the wastes that get through, undigested waste. So how to improve your digestion. This is something that I want everybody to do this spring, and I'm going to point out the most important things. I think it's fascinating that this is the time of Lent in the spring, right at the change of season. It's like a blessing from above that we have this instruction. And, you know, most people, you know, you give up something to Lent, for Lent. Most people don't give up broccoli, right? I mean, George Bush, but other than that, you know, most people pick something like, oh, sugar or chocolate or, you know, something, alcohol, something they feel maybe isn't so great for them. And that's good because it gives your body a little break, and it gives it a chance to digest some of these wastes and impurities that are starting to come out of the body. In fact, Ayurveda says it's like in the spring, imagine the Alps with beautiful snow-capped mountains. And then in the spring, the sun and the warmth start to melt the snow. And you get all these little rivulets coming down from the mountaintop into bigger and bigger streams, bigger and bigger streams. So all of that melts and flows through the little nicks and crannies of the rock. And it's the same as in the body, that it's as if these impurities got frozen tight in there as we were shivering and trying to keep warm. And now everything is kind of loosening and opening up, and those impurities want to flow. And do we flow well through cheese? It's kind of viscous, right? So we flow better when we're feeding our body something like hot water. And the wonders of hot water are that it actually supports peristalsis, for example. And what is digestion after all? Which class in high school that you took most represents what digestion is? Or college? It's a science class.
Lunch.
Lunch, a practical man.
Biology.
Yeah, but actually, but digestion, the process of breaking the food down. Chemistry, right, because acids and enzymes, those are all chemical reactions. And if you might remember, do you remember the little Bunsen burners? You put something in the burner, you know, in a little flask and put it, why do you put it over a Bunsen burner?
Chemical reaction.
Do you want to speed it up or slow it down?
Speed it up.
Speed it up. So if we want to promote chemistry, like digestion, do we want to put ice cubes in the flask, or do we want to put something warm? Warm. Yeah, warm. And if we want to melt, say we have some ice and we want to melt it, is it better to put hot water on it, pour hot water over it? Will it melt faster, or just like hot sand? What will melt it faster? Hot water. Yeah, so drink hot water, boiled hot water. This time of year especially, start at the equinox. Drink it all through the winter if you want. It's going to help you have an easier spring. But just start to drink it, and I would recommend drink at least this much, like a quarter cup every half hour, or a half a cup every hour through the day. That thing alone will really smooth your spring. That will help a lot. And many people don't drink enough water to begin with. How are we going to detox without water? When was the last time you took a shower without water? If you don't expect the outside of your body to get clean without water, how do you expect the inside of your body, right? So drink the hot water. And don't eat too much, you know, about 2/3 of your capacity, or even a half this time of year. Eat on a regular schedule. When do you think we should have our main meal?
Lunch.
Noon. Lunch, right. And in fact, research shows that for weight loss, having the majority of your calories before 3 p.m., those people lost weight more quickly and lost more weight than those eating the same number of calories in a day, but they ate the majority of them after 3 p.m. I know that can be challenging in our society, especially when we eat late, we work all day, but really having a solid lunch will also help energy and help your stamina and focus during the day. Eat only after the previous meal has been digested, and avoid these heavy foods like cheese and red meat this time of year. Anything cold, anything too rough like too many salads. If you want raw, better to juice it. Including no stale or canned foods, leftovers. That's all for the winter, right? We all ate out of our root cellar in our canned food this winter, right? That we made in the fall. Well, we used to do that. And I remember we used to have, there were some swans on a pond nearby where I lived. And the owner said, oh no, we don't feed the swans grain in the spring. We let them out of the cage, they go to the pond, and they eat greens. It's good for them. It cleans their system, and indeed they had no desire for anything else. Just wanted to eat the greens. So now's the time to eat your greens. Put some spices and herbs in your cooking. You're going to get some specific spices for you in a few minutes. We're going to take a quiz and find out what's best for you. Adapt to the time and season we're telling you about now. That warm water with the meals, and avoid eating late at night, and eat according to your type or your dosha imbalance, or basically the season. I'm telling you now, we want to have mostly cooked vegetables, fresh fruits. If you're going to have grains, whole grains, smaller amount of grains, legumes are fine, all the cooked beans and dals and all that. And if you're not vegetarian and you need to eat some protein, flesh food, I would recommend more to have fish, but make sure it's low in mercury and PCB, so wild caught.
Yeah. How are we going to know that?
Well, how to know that? You can go to vitalchoice.com. Vitalchoice.com does not pay me to say this, but I have plenty of patients who have used their fish, even flown to them, because they test all their fish and they tell you how much is in it of various things. Wild caught, if you can believe what's on it, wild caught from the sea has less. Farmed fish you definitely don't want, because they feed little fish, the big fish that concentrated all the toxins, they cut them up and they feed them to the little fish. So the little fish that are supposed to be pure actually get really unpure. So, okay, so what kind of toxin? What kind of toxic? So here this is what we're gonna find out. There are actually 3 types of toxin or ama. Ama means this undigested waste in the body. One is chemically non-reactive. This is just those cloggy molecules that are clogging the channels. Let's think about LDL cholesterol as an example, something we don't need. It builds up and coats the arteries. But LDL cholesterol, believe it or not, the experts say is not damaging. LDL, why is LDL not damaging as just LDL? Anyone know?
It's a Band-Aid.
Because it doesn't get laid down in the lining of the artery unless it's been attacked by free radicals. So it's only when it's become oxidized and becomes what's called now amavisha. This is the chemically reactive type. So oxidized LDL, chemically reactive debris, damages the channels. That's what can actually cause damage. And I'll take questions at the end because we're doing a recording here. So, Garavisha is another type of toxin that's from the outside of the body. It literally means slow poison. Xenobiotics or toxicants that come in, we breathe through the air, we get through our water, we get through our food. These are the chemicals. See the little chemical structure on the right. These are the chemicals that we don't even know most of the time that we're getting, but they get into our fat tissue often and don't come out easily. Amavisha, the little flame there, because they are chemically reactive, they're like burning, they're the oxidation going on in the body, the little rust that we call. And then the Ama, plain Ama, that's kind of a famous brand, kind of a trademark bottle of glue. So that's the sticky stuff. But it's just inert sticky. So what's important about this is the kind of detox you do should be based on what is the predominant type of this Ama or toxins that you have. So what I want you to do is I'm going to mention these different things. I'm going to go a little fast. Don't worry if you don't get it perfect. You're going to just get the general idea. You're going to get a valid number, basically. So I want you to rate yourself 0. You put a 0 down. So you're going to have 8 numbers by the time I'm done with this. You can put them one on top of each other because then you're going to add them up. Okay? So the first, what I'm going to say is I'm going to say a sentence like, the first one says, I often feel nauseated for no particular reason. So if that's you, really you, a lot, then put a 3. If it's kind of maybe half the time, put a 2. If it's sometimes, put a 1. And if it's never, put a 0. Is that clear? So 3 is like really you. 2 is, yeah, quite a bit of the time. 1 is like less than half the time. And 0 is virtually never or very rarely. Okay? All right. So the first one, I often feel nauseated for no particular reason. 2 is, I have hyperacidity or burning in the stomach or chest. 3, my skin frequently breaks out. Now that could be some kind of acne or rosacea or a rash or little bumps or anything like that. 4, my mouth is often dry. 5, I often feel weak or pains in the legs. 6, I have sensitivities or intolerances to foods, pets, trees, flowers, or other things in my environment. If it really applies to you, put a 5. I heard somebody like it might really apply to them. Number 7, I often feel mentally or emotionally fatigued. And 8 is I often feel whole body fatigue or feverish in the evening. Like you feel something's wrong, like you feel hot. Okay? All right, so add up the numbers. See what you get. All right, we're going to go on to the next one. Number 7 is I often feel mentally or emotionally fatigued. Okay? Okay, here we go with the next one. I wake up tired even after a good night's sleep. 2 is I feel lethargic. 3, my tongue is coated. You can ask your neighbor. 4, I don't ever really feel hungry even when I haven't eaten for several hours. I mean the real, like the grindy feeling in the stomach, the growly feeling. 5 is I lack mental clarity and energy. 6, I feel blocked in the body, including constipation, sinus congestion, and difficulty breathing. Bronchitis, sinus problem, allergy. 7, I feel a sense of heaviness in the abdomen, legs, or body as a whole. And 6, I frequently experience indigestion such as gas, bloating, or feeling... 8, I'm sorry. Gas, bloating, or heaviness in the stomach and the food just sitting there.
This is all the time or what?
If it's all the time, you put a 3. If it's half the time, you put a 2. If it's sometimes a 1, and if it's never a 0. Okay? I wake up tired even after a good night's sleep. I feel lethargic. My tongue is coated. And I don't feel real hunger even if I haven't eaten for several hours. Okay, so how many have one of those is a lot more than the other? Like maybe 2/3 of you, okay. Okay, good. So you want to follow the tips. You look at your sheets now. You have a sheet that has a tea on one side and has a spice mix on the other side, okay? All right, you should have a handout that's two-sided. On one side it says instructions for a water, a detox tea, and the other one has instructions for a smart spice recipe. Okay? You got that? So, could I use yours for a second to show? Okay, thanks. Okay. So, first of all, on the Spring Detox Custom Detox Infusion, that's one side, you want to follow if you were highest in the first test I gave you, then you want to follow the type A reactive AMA instructions, okay? And if you were higher in the second one, then you want to follow the type B in the middle column, which means those are the ingredients you drop in the water to infuse, and then you sip on that water during the day. Ideally warm in the springtime, because we want you to be drinking hot water or warm tea. And type C is if you weren't very high in either of them, say you were maybe 8 or less in both of those, then you want to do type C. That's a generic one for prevention, okay? Now, on the back, you also have a smart spice recipe. Now, these are spices to add to your food and your cooking, especially this time of year, to help you eliminate toxins more easily and digest better. This will help stimulate that good digestion that creates good, simple, healthy molecules of nutrients and avoid those heavy, cloggy molecules, okay? So type A for those scoring highest in the first quiz, type B for those scoring highest in the second, and type C for those who were low, below 8 in each of them for prevention, okay? And they give you all the instructions how to make it. All right. So I'd like to just mention a couple of points about allergies, since some of you mentioned you were really concerned to learn something about allergies. So I'm going to give you a couple points. One, there is a natural antihistamine type substance called quercetin, which is helpful for some people. That's an over-the-counter supplement.
Could you spell that, please?
Quercetin. 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 And that has helped a number of my patients. It's a simple thing to take. But in the context, generally natural products do not work as well as a drug does if you don't put it in the context of maybe drinking some hot water, using some spices, eating the lighter diet at this time of year. In fact, one of my patients was happily giving me feedback that years later she said, "You told me not to eat sugar during spring," and she said, "I cut sugar completely out of my diet every spring," and she says, "I completely control my allergies that way." Now that did include also ice cream. So if you have stevia coconut cream ice cream, I'm still going to say don't have it. Stevia, like non-sugar sweetened, but it's cold and it's creamy. Cold is not good this time of year. Remember the list of things I gave you. So, you know, now's the time to have a lovely, like a beet soup. And why do I say beet? A nice hot borscht. Why do I say beets? Beets actually help the bile flow. They help eliminate through that. And all the fiber of the greens, they also help the bile flow, and they help your bowels to eliminate, because if things stay in the bowel too long, they tend to bind to bile acids and be reabsorbed, and then we got the toxin back in.
What about the raw beet?
Raw beet, if you grew up having them, be my guest, but otherwise cook them. They're easier to digest that way. You could juice them though. Could juice them. Okay, so how do we get rid of toxins? We talked about strengthening digestion. We're just talking about a good elimination. I'm going to talk about some herbs, and we're going to have a drawing. By the way, everyone who wants to be in the drawing. Also, if you don't want to get tips from me, don't put your email address there, but we would invite you all to that if you'd like to be informed of future talks and get tips from time to time. I'm not somebody who overwhelms people with emails. I don't like that myself. So, but I will share with you things from time to time I think may be useful for you to know at a certain time of year. But if you'd like to be entered into the drawing, please pass that to the middle center aisle, and Caitlin's going to pick those up. You have a handout that you can put your email address in, please, and also if you were interested in a consultation, but for some reason can't do it tonight, then you can put your phone number on the bottom and you'll get a call back. So those are the 2 action steps there. And before everyone leaves tonight, we're going to do the drawing, but we're going to keep drawing until we have someone who's still here because we want to give them away tonight. So we want you to be here in person. And the 3 things we're giving away are not chosen in randomness. They're chosen for certain reasons. The digestone is called Triphala. Triphala means 3 fruits, and it is a premier elimination supporter from Ayurveda. It's one of the most popular herbs in all of Ayurveda, especially today. And it's just 3 fruits, so most people tolerate it very, very well. It's dried fruit. And it has a gentle action to cleanse the bowel, to help give good, healthy elimination, good bowel movements, but it doesn't have a stimulant in it. It's not habit forming, and it's suitable for most people. If you have a serious health condition, you should ask your doctor before you do any of these spices or herbs or change in diet or any supplements that I may recommend tonight. Okay, I just want you to know you should check that with your doctor, because some of these things are very potent influences of drug metabolism, for example. So you don't want to just start popping cumin or curcumin pills all day long, because it actually may cause you to become toxic on your medication, because curcumin actually ramps down some of the enzymes that metabolize a lot of the drugs. So that's true for a lot of herbs. So you want to take them intelligently. Okay, so I would like to move on. If you were in the category of category 1, then those are the top things for you. You want to have some ginger. Oh, no. This is the second category. Now, we got them on the wrong place. But if you were highest in the second quiz that I just gave you, then you want to have more ginger root and a little bit more cumin and things like that, which will help enhance your digestive fire. If you were highest in the first part of the quiz, you want to have herbs that are cooling, green juices, antioxidant-rich diet and herbs, and be careful against overdoing alcohol. Avoid artificial chemicals, preservatives, and certainly recreational drugs, because you are especially prone to have bad effects from that over time. And then Garavisha, we're going to learn next. We're going to learn how we can help our liver detox from all the chemicals we may inadvertently breathe in this spring. So here is a picture of our very special organ, the liver. And it shows on the left all these toxins coming in through the bloodstream. On the left it says phase 1. On the right, an arrow goes over to the right, phase 2. And from that we have waste products that are water soluble up in the top corner. And then we have those eliminating through the gallbladder, bile, and stool. That's the bowel movements on the left. And through the kidneys and the urine on the right. Brilliant system. I can't take credit for it, but I really admire it. All right, so phase 1 and phase 2, what do those mean? This is really fascinating. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I do. So phase 1, basically some toxins can just physically like go out through the urine. Our kidneys can get rid of them. But a lot of toxins are not, they're maybe fat soluble and they're sticky. They like to just glom onto the fat and kind of go in there and hang out. So springtime, or when we're exposed to a lot of them, we want to get them out and we want to help the body eliminate them. Well, they are not able to be dissolved in the blood because they're not water soluble. You know these concepts? Like if you take olive oil and you pour it in a cup of warm water, it doesn't just disperse, right? It beads up. It's like a glob on top. And that's because it doesn't mix. And that has to do with the chemistry of polarity and non-polarity. But to suffice it to say, if you want to get fat-soluble things out of the body, we have to process them. And that's partly what phase 1 does, especially these enzymes. There are 50 to 100 cytochrome P450 and other enzymes that break down, they break them apart, and they make them very reactive. You heard of free radicals, right? Free radicals are very reactive substances. So what they do is they take a toxic compound, they rip it apart, and they actually often make it more toxic. So they're toxic intermediaries. So the ones that don't go out of the body directly, they get reactive. They are made reactive. Why? Because then the body will put something onto it to neutralize it that allows it to go out. Okay? But in the meantime, it has to pull it apart so it can paste something on. It's sort of like, you know, if you have Velcro. You know, if it's just smooth, Velcro's not going to stick. So the conjugates are sticky, but they have to make the other molecule sticky. So they'll stick on. So that's what that reactivity is all about. But in the meantime, they can become more carcinogenic. And again, they can produce a lot of excess free radicals that the body then has to mop up because those damage the tissues. Actually, I studied the metabolism of estrogen, and maybe you know that there are kind of different numbers or byproducts of estrogen, and they can become like 16-hydroxy or 2-hydroxy, and one is considered to be unhealthier or more carcinogenic than the other. But it turns out that it's only in the presence of free radicals that the negative one actually becomes carcinogenic. And so having a lot of antioxidants around can really protect us from even carcinogenic, potentially carcinogenic substances. Now, phase 2 is kind of the neutralize and then eliminate. So this phase happens, sulfur groups, methyl groups, acetyl groups, glucuronidation are all processes by which those very toxic things have something attached, and then they can go out of the body easily. So how good is your liver? Phase 1. Well, how good is your phase 1? Does anyone know? You never really thought about it. Okay. I hadn't either. But you have noticed that some people are really sensitive to caffeine, right? And some people can drink 7 cups and they go to bed, sleep soundly. You noticed that, right? Yeah, there's a real variation. Well, it turns out that if you're really sensitive to caffeine, your phase 1 enzymes are probably a little weak. And a lot of this is just genetic. Okay? So that's kind of the first step in detoxifying chemicals. So that's in one way, okay, you're a little bit at a disadvantage. You got a little bit of a bottleneck right at the start, right? But there are ways to improve it, so we're going to go into that. So if you're really sensitive to caffeine, and maybe you're sensitive to a lot of drugs, let's assume that this is the starting point. So if a few sips keep you awake, your phase 1 needs support. So what can we do about that? Cabbage, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, kale. Kale is flower child of vegetables these days. So those are all in the cabbage family, cruciferous, and they support phase 1 detox. They help promote that. Also, I would recommend this time of year to have them cooked, steamed, unless you grew up and you just munch down on that raw cabbage every day. It would be a better idea. Sauerkraut is fermented. It depends on, if that agrees with you or not. I generally don't recommend fermented foods across the board for everyone because some people's stomach is too sensitive. So certainly you know yourself if you enjoy it and it seems to agree with you, fine. High protein diet, it doesn't mean just eat tons of meat, but have adequate protein because if you don't, you will not have the amino acids to run and make these enzymes. It's very important. People who don't eat meat, or vegetarian or vegan, have to work especially hard. I talked to a doctor in a lab in Chicago. I had done amino acid profiles on over 100 people, and most of them vegetarians. And I called him up one time to ask him a question about something. He goes, "Oh, are you that doctor from Iowa?" I said, "Well, which doctor from Iowa?" So, "Oh, the one with all the low amino acid values." I said, "Well, yeah, they're all low, aren't they?" And he goes, "Yeah," and he says, "And I bet they're all chemically sensitive, aren't they?" I go, "How'd you know that?" And he said, "I see it all over the world, even in India where there are a lot of vegetarians." So he said they just don't have the raw materials to drive the detox functions. So it's important to have enough protein. Also, oranges and tangerines, interestingly, but not grapefruit. Grapefruit actually, it ramps down phase 1, which is why you're not supposed to take it if you're taking a lot of different medications. You don't take it around the time of your medication because it slows down the breakdown of your drug and you could become toxic from the drug. It could build up in your systems. Nutrients, these B vitamins, vitamin C, they are all good for driving phase 1 and phase 2. Herbs, caraway and dill seed. Milk thistle, which also helps protect the liver from free radicals and other damaging compounds that it's working on. Sassafras tea. And avoid charcoal broiled meats, pesticides, paints and exhaust fumes, okay? Now we're going to talk about, well, maybe we can't avoid pesticides as much as we want to. Maybe we're going to be breathing them in the next few months here because they're going to be sprayed in the air and from the airplanes and all that. So we really have to do some self-protection here. And I'm very, very committed to empowering you with some things you can do to support your detox. And I encourage you, I hope you will all share this with your friends and anybody who has any interest at all so that we can all protect our health as much as possible from this. So vitamins, oops, did I skip? I skipped one. Yeah. Whoops. This is actually, there we go. Sensitive to caffeine. Here's some more things, more B vitamins. Lipotropics, these are some amino acids and ones that help bile flow. Minerals, magnesium, iron, and antioxidants themselves such as glutathione. Flavonoids and catechins found in green tea. Without the caffeine since you're sensitive. Okay, now, how many people handle caffeine easily? Some people, yeah? You know, my mother used to drink 7 cups a day. She always had me make her percolator and 7 scoops and it was gone at the end of the day. I don't know how she did it. I didn't get that gene, actually. Well, handle caffeine easily, what does that mean? It's the opposite, right? It means your phase 1 enzymes are super good because they are the ones that break down caffeine. But what's the thing about phase 1? What about all those molecules? I said, what's phase 1 doing? It's ripping them apart and making them potentially more toxic, carcinogenic, free radicalized. So you have to mop up those free radicals that get created, because you're creating a lot of them, because you're breaking down all those things like a good liver should, but you got to have plenty of antioxidants around. That's why I'm giving away a bottle of the Amrit nectar tablets. And it's simply because research in the laboratory, published research, has shown that the nectar, that formula, Ayurvedic formula of all several dozen herbs in a very balanced formula. I haven't found anybody who had any problem with it. It's very balanced and most people can take it no problem. It has over 10,000 times the antioxidant effect of the same amount of vitamin C. So if you take 5 grams of vitamin C, that a lot of people will take 5 grams of vitamin C. Well, you take 5 grams of this, which would be 5 tablets. You think, oh, these tablets is a whole bunch of herbs. Versus I got 5 grams of purified vitamin C. You think this drug-like thing, this single nutrient is going to be more powerful. 10,000 times more powerful. And this nectar tablet, it also works on a lot of our enzymes. Like it has been shown in the brain of animals, forgive us or forgive those researchers for using animals for the study, but they found that it increased glutathione in the brain several times over. Glutathione is a natural detoxifier that we have. It's our #1 detoxifying enzyme in the whole body, including the brain as well as the liver. Glutathione. It's made up of 3 amino acids, which is why we need them. Cysteine, glycine, glutamine. Okay? We need amino acids to make our glutathione. So it turns out that the Amrit nectar, this ancient Ayurvedic formula, came from thousands of years ago. It is super powerful for helping to mop up free radicals. So, whoops. Sorry about that. So, be sure you can mop up the free radicals, and you want to be able to conjugate and eliminate those metabolites really quickly, right? So you're making the reactive, you want to attach something to neutralize it. You want to get that Velcro attached so it neutralizes that rough surface, okay? So that means you have to have a really good phase 2 to match your good phase 1. Does that make sense to you? Okay. So what does that involve? Well, this is a case of saying, are you pathological detoxify? I didn't make up that term. I think it's pretty dramatic, but that's what it's called. Chemically sensitive. Here, I had a patient who lived in a little house like that for several years while she got better from chemical sensitivity. So does garlic make you sick? Does your urine have a strong smell after you eat asparagus? I thought everybody's did, but I guess. Did you suffer from toxemia, high blood pressure and such during your pregnancy? And do you have strong reaction to toxins? Like you are like phobic that somebody is going to get on the plane with a molecule of perfume on them. So in that case, you want to shore up your phase 2. Sorry about these rogue arrows. They just jumped out of where they were supposed to be. So here's a way to enhance your phase 2 detox system. These are some of the many substances. This is a good time of year, especially if you handle coffee really well, to have some eggs with your coffee in the morning. They'll provide good amino acids plus choline. The sulfur amino acids, don't give up garlic, onions, and leeks for good. If you're a yogi, still eat leeks. They provide good source of sulfur, as do eggs. Taurine's also important, cysteine, these glutathione precursors. This substance right here, N-acetylcysteine, happens to be a very good supplement that helps with glutathione production in the body. And it's a good form of it that gets easily absorbed. N-acetylcysteine is actually in a product that I'm recommending that's on your sheet. And it's something you can go to this website and you can get a 20% discount. You go to that link. You have to put in liver GI detox exactly the way I wrote it there. Search engine will find it. You'll get 20% off. And the cool thing is that the setup, we set this up just for this event. But it turns out that you can order any other supplements and get 20% off, and maybe you'll get a better savings there than anywhere else.
What website?
It's on there. I'm not going to tell you because you have to go to exactly that one. If I just say the company, you won't find it. No, this is a company. This product is a pure encapsulations product. It's on your, there's a sheet that has red on the top that says special discounts. At the very bottom of that sheet that says special discounts, okay? So that, at the very bottom of that, it tells you how to access that website. You also, by the way, get 20% off Moppy products this week only through Sunday night. You go to moppy.com, put in the coupon that's also on that sheet, or you call up the agent and you tell them that coupon code. That's on your sheet. These are Maharishi Ayurveda products. That's a different thing.
Can you go to the store?
I don't know. You can ask them. Probably. Probably. I don't know. It's linked to the coupon, so they could tell you coupon code. I think so, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Okay, fish oils, good. Cruciferous vegetables, you can't go wrong. They strengthen both phase 1 and phase 2. Vitamin B12, SAMe, and minimize NSAIDs and aspirin because they slow down phase 2. And make sure you get plenty of good fats like olive oil in your diet. Okay, symptoms of toxic overload: feeling blah, fluish, fatigue, depressed, mentally dull, getting a rash, achy flanks. I'm adding this because these are things I found around here in the spring when there's spraying going on. People they come and say, one person came to me and said, can you write for an MRI? My back hurts. I said, well, where? He said, well, right here. And I said, well, how many days? Oh, 3 days. I said, well, take this Olimtox O, drink plenty of water, and call me at the end of the week if it's not gone. And they never called me. And they never had the MRI. It was just the kidneys can ache, the liver can ache if they're going through a lot of detoxification, because remember, free radicals can be being produced. Inflammation can occur. Irritated bladder, that also can happen. You might feel you're getting a urinary tract infection. Just can flush a lot of water and it'll go away. And again, the achy liver. I must say I have had a number of patients with rashes, at least 2 patients with very persistent rashes and hives, very bad cases of them, who both associated them with being exposed to some spraying that was going on very near them and being exposed. So, you know, if you hear planes go over, that maybe that's when you should close your windows and just, not get a big dose of that. Okay. I'm trying to get it to go to the next slide, but there's some kind of little issue here. There we go. We're almost done, folks. You almost made it to the end here. Surprisingly, I love this quote. I came across it in one of the articles I was reading. Some dietary plant extracts show profound inducing capability as compared to pure compounds, indicating combinatorial effects of compounds found in whole foods. We've always said that, like Ayurveda and natural medicine is using whole plants and combinations that are synergistic. Like the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And here, that's what they're saying in their fancy scientific language, that the combination could actually be more powerful. I had a laugh at some product company that was talking about turmeric and curcumin, and they said, well, the problem with curcumin, which is a very potent anti-cancer extract from turmeric, the orange spice, which, by the way, turmeric is good if you're not so sensitive to caffeine. If you're very sensitive to caffeine, it's good because it will lower the phase 1 and it'll increase the phase 2. But if you're not so good at getting rid of caffeine, you don't want to take excess turmeric. You don't want to take turmeric capsules. Just cook with turmeric. Because if you overdo it, you'll lessen your phase 1 even more, that initial bottleneck. Anyway, they were talking about how it doesn't get absorbed very well. So they were putting things like black pepper in. And finally, I saw one company said, hey, we got amazingly greater absorption when we added turmeric to the curcumin. It's like they took the curcumin out of the turmeric and it didn't absorb, so they're putting. Oh boy. Anyway, it all comes around, goes around. So here are some whole plant sources. I mentioned the nectar tablets, or it comes as a paste for those who have really good digestion and like something sweet. Milk thistle is an amazing protector of our liver. It's a good thing to have, especially this time of year. My favorite, all-time favorite detoxifying herbal combination is Elimtox O, because it does not cause, it doesn't cause any heating effect. It neutralizes heat and rash and inflammatory tendencies. So it's almost everybody tolerates it well. But again, if you have a serious condition or are taking medicines, talk to your doctor. It can be a little diuretic, which I take as good, but if you find yourself more thirsty and drinking more and peeing more, it's probably an action also of that. But this time of year, I recommend everybody in Fairfield take a Elimtox O and drink your detox water for the next 3 months, till the end of July, say. Genetrac also has Gaduchi or heart-leaved moonseed in it. See the little leaves down there? That's heart-leaved moonseed. Heart-leaved moonseed has the ability, it says in Ayurveda, to help the body get rid of both internally and externally generated toxins. Toxins from the outside as well as impurities from the inside. It's a beautiful herb. It's also in Elimtox O, but also in Genetrac, which is especially to help urinary system. And last is the liver GI detox by Pure Encapsulations. Why I added that to the mix is it has, you know, all those vitamins and nutrients that you saw on that list. It has them in a very complete and balanced way. So that provides the biochemical supplement support for your detox system. And it has that N-acetylcysteine in it. It has other amino acids, it has vitamins, it has herbs, it has a milk thistle. So I like it because it's got substantial amounts of everything, but in a pretty balanced way. And my experience so far is that people tolerate it quite well. It's not too harsh, but it's significant. So especially if you're vegetarian or you feel you don't handle caffeine or drugs very well, you may want to supplement with that as well during this season, the liver GI detox formula. So lastly, I just wanted to invite you all, if you enjoy getting knowledge, I'm planning more and more sharing of knowledge through webinars on my YouTube channel, videos about different topics. And my website, you can, now if you leave your email address tonight, we will get you on the list, but you can also just go sometime, check out my website. It has quizzes on there. It has a quiz for your digestion. So if you have digestive symptoms and you want to do something to improve them, you can take the quiz there and it will give you tips. Every 3 or 4 days, it'll send you another tip that you can implement gradually into your lifestyle to help correct your digestive imbalance. There's also a quiz for stress because, well, I guess we all know why. And people handle stress differently. You know, somebody at the office might just blow up whenever they get under stress, and somebody else kind of gets nervous and anxious, and some people just kind of get depressed and withdrawn and sluggish. So we have different styles, and this will help you with tips for diet and lifestyle and herbs for your type. And if you're interested in consultations, we do have this April special going on with 10% off for repeat visits, and we have a very special introductory program for those coming in who have never had a consultation before, and Maureen or Caitlin can help you with that. Back there, you get a discount if you sign up tonight. So, and I'm going to stay here and answer any questions you might have. I wanted to just thank you all for coming and commend you for staying through a very heady lecture. But I think it's really important knowledge, and I hope that you will have gained some tips tonight that you will implement in the next couple months, and that they will help you stay healthy and enjoy a very fun and vital summer coming up. So thank you very much.